Hey there everyone, thank you so much for being here, thank you so much for watching. In this video I'm going to show you how to install pfSense as a VM on VMware ESXi version 8. And if you plan on using VLANs on your network, I will show you how to configure the internal leg of your pfSense firewall as a sort of a trunk port so that it will be able to communicate on all of your VLANs. So, without any further ado, let's get things started. Alright guys, so we are at the computer and there are a few prerequisites that you must have on hand before you start working on it. First of all, you need a computer with more than one network port, because at least one will be for LAN and at least one will be for WAN, so you need more than one network port. You need ESXi 8 already installed on this server and running. You need to download pfSense ISO and upload it to a data store on your ESXi server, and you need to write down all your ISP related connection details. For me, I have fiber without any equipment for my ISP. I just have a media converter from fiber to RJ45, so this is what I'll connect to my ESXi server WAN port. But if you're using a connection that's based on PPPoE, you need to make sure you know your ISP username and password. So these are all the prerequisites that you need to have on hand before you start working. I already have all these prerequisites done. So what you will need to do next is to connect your computer to your ESXi server LAN port, which is at least in a regular case is the only network port that's configured. Connect directly with a network cable from your computer to your ESXi server directly, and for now we can hold on with connecting your ISP. This is exactly what I have done. Now remember, you do not have connection not to the internet at this point and not to your local network. You don't have DHCP, so you need to assign your computer a static IP address on the same subnet that you have given your ESXi server. For example, my ESXi server IP address is 192.168.1.4. So I will give my computer, I've already done it, but I will give my computer a different network, a different IP on the same subnet. In my case, it will be 111 on the same subnet mask. I don't need to worry about default gateway or DNS at this point. So the moment I've given my computer a different IP address on the same subnet, I can go ahead and log in. Let me do that step again. Type the IP address of my ESXi server and I will get to the login screen. Alright, so the prerequisite step is done and now we are ready to start installing. I have already uploaded my pfSense ISO to my data store. Now, what we need to do is to start working on networking. We have several things to configure. I plan on using, for example, VLANs on my demo network. If you don't plan on using VLANs, you can completely skip this task. But let's create VLANs, for example. Let's name this VLAN servers, and give this VLAN tag of 10. Click on add and let's create just another one, for example, for clients, VLAN ID 20. Click on add, and there's another port group we need to create, and this will be sort of the trunk port for the pfSense virtual machine. Let's call it all, and the VLAN ID will be 4095. Alright, so the LAN portion of our networking is configured, and now we need to take care of configuring the WAN side of things. So let's create a new virtual switch, create a standard switch, You can name it ISP, select the network port that you have available on this drop-down list. I have another 3, but you might have just another 1 left. I will select VMNIC 3 in my case, click on add, and now we'll go back to port groups because we'll need to create another port group on our new virtual switch. I will name it exactly the same, but it's important that it will be created on the ISP virtual switch, and click on add. So networking configuration on VMware side is complete, and now we are ready to create our virtual machine. At this point, I will also advise that you go ahead and connect your ISP equipment to the network port that you have assigned to the virtual switch. I'm going to do that right now. Alright, so my ISP equipment is connected to the designated port. So let's create a new virtual machine. Click on next, name it pfSense. OS guest family will be other, and guest OS version will be FreeBSD 64-bit 14. Next, select your data store, click next. I'm going to provide 2 CPUs for my virtual machine. I'm also going to give it 2 gigabytes of RAM. I'm going to give it 16 gigabytes of hard disk, and I'm going to select to thin provision it. And now we have a network port that we will assign to the all port group, but we will need to add another network adapter, and we will assign it to the ISP port group. And let's attach our pfSense ISO file so that we will be able to install the operating system. Click on next and finish. Our virtual machine is created, so let's power it on and open up the console. Alright, so here is the installation wizard. Let's click on accept, click on install. AutoZFS is fine by me. Let's click on install. I don't have any RAID array in my virtual machine, so let's click on OK. Click on space to select the virtual hard disk and enter to click OK. Click yes and enter, and now the installation process will begin. Alright, that's it. It took less than a minute. Let's click on reboot, and let's give our pfSense virtual machine to actually load up, and I will continue the recording once we get to the point where we need to make further decisions. Alright guys, so this is where we need to select which network card is going to be our WAN and which one is going to be our LAN. And you see we have 2 options right here, VMX0 and VMX1 with their MAC addresses. So in order to know which one is which, we're going to cheat a little bit. We're going to right click on our virtual machine and select edit settings. And on our network adapters, we can see that the one that's on our all, that will be our internal leg, LAN leg, the network adapter MAC address ends in 278D. That's what we need to remember, 278D. And now we'll go back to our virtual machine and let's search for 278D, and we can see that it's VMX0. So this will be our LAN interface. Let's go ahead. So for our WAN, it will be VMX1, and for our LAN, VMX1, and for our LAN, it will be VMX0. Do you want to proceed? Indeed I do. And now pfSense will configure everything that's needed according to our choices. Alright guys, so the initial configuration is complete. I can see that my choices were correct because I already have a WAN IP address for my ISP already configured. But one thing that I always like to do, even before I try to log in to the pfSense web interface, is to select in this sort of menu the option that's numbered 2. I want to select 2 because I want to configure my LAN interface. I am asked if I want to configure my IPv4 LAN interface via DHCP. I don't want to do it. I want my LAN interface to have a static IP address of 192.168.1.1 on a 24 subnet mask. For this question, for upstream gateway, click enter. For IPv6, I'm not going even to bother. Do I want to enable DHCP? I do want to enable, starting from 192.168.1.100 to 182.168.1.200. Do I want to revert to HTTP, the web interface? Do I want to revert it to HTTP? At this point, I do. Let's click on yes. And actually, we are now ready to actually try to launch the pfSense web interface. So let's go ahead and try to open a new tab. Type 192.168.1.1. Now, you might have a browser that will default on using HTTPS, but we have reverted back to HTTP. In fact, let me write it down on a notepad, just so we will all be very clear about it. HTTP, so that the browser will not try to revert to default HTTPS, 192.168.1.1, copy, paste, and indeed, we get to the pfSense web interface. The default username and password will be admin pfSense. Alright, click on next and next. If you want to assign a host name or domain name, or if you want to change the default DNS servers to use and not using your ISP DNS servers, you can type those in here and unselect override DNS. Select your time zone, and this is where you'll configure your ISP connection details. For me, it's DHCP, but if you are using PPPoE, you will select it here and provide the username and password in these fields right here. I'm going to stick with DHCP. Great. Click on next. LAN IP is already configured with our console. Click on next. Admin password, let's select a password. Great. Click on finish. Click on accept, close, and actually guys, I'm going to close this message right here. We are done installing pfSense, and hold and behold, it's working, it's up and running. So the majority of our work is already completed and with a lot of success. Now, because we have installed pfSense as a virtual machine, what I would recommend that you do at this point is go to the package manager, available packages, type here in the search box open, and install Open VM Tools. Confirm, install it. I do recommend installing it because it will allow a smooth connection from your host to your VM in regards to statistics and rebooting, and it's very recommended. Success. Alright, great. At this point, even though it's not mandatory, I do recommend that you go into diagnostic and reboot your pfSense. I'm going to pause the recording and resume it once the rebooting process is complete. Alright guys, so the rebooting process is complete. Let's log in again. Great. Now, as I said, our installation process is complete and pfSense is up and running and ready for us to configure it. I already have a very detailed video I done previously on configuring VLANs and firewall rules in pfSense, so I don't want to repeat myself, but I do want to verify that my VLAN configuration is working, so I will breeze through the process of creating the VLANs. I'll go to Interfaces and Assignments. VLANs, let's create on the LAN parent interface VLAN tag 10 and name it servers, and let's create VLAN tag 20 for clients and click on save. And now interface assignments, available network ports will be VLAN 10, so click on add, VLAN 20, click on add. That's great, click on save. And now opt1 is our VLAN 10, we will enable it, name it servers, static IP will be 192.168, let's say 10.1 on a 24 subnet, and apply. Let's go back to interfaces. Opt2 will be our clients, IPv4 will be static 192.168.20.1 on a 24 subnet. One more thing that I want to enable in order to make my testing life easier is to enable DHCP. On the LAN it's already enabled, so let's enable it on servers, and starting with 192.168.10.100 2.200, click on save. Let's do the same for clients, starting from 20.100 to 20.200, click on save. And one last thing I want to do in order to make sure I have connectivity is to go into firewall rules. I'm going to go into the client's network because the LAN network already has a default allow to any rule. So I want to, in my clients, even though I do not recommend creating firewall rules like this, just for testing purposes, I'm going to select pass IPv4 protocol any source client's network to any destination. I do want to provide internet connectivity to clients on the client's VLAN. So I already have a virtual machine and I want to connect it, to connect its network port, not to the VM network, but to the client's network. So when this virtual machine comes online, it should get an IP address from the client's VLAN. That will be a success for me, and it should already have internet connectivity. So let's go ahead and verify that. Alright, let's go and see what IP address this machine got. And as you can see, 192.168.20.100, that means that our LAN connectivity and VLAN segmentation is indeed working. Let's go ahead and verify that we do have internet connectivity. I'm just going to launch my terminal and I'll try to ping 8.8.8, and indeed I do get replies from Google's DNS server, meaning that WAN connectivity is indeed right there. So guys, this was my recommended way on how to install pfSense as a virtual machine on ESXi version 8. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, I hope it was informative and I hope it helped you installing pfSense as a virtual machine. Please like this video if you liked it. It will really mean a lot to me. It will help me a lot. And subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you all in the next video. Bye everyone.